Sure.
In this episode of the Success Grid podcast with Ross and Talib, we are going to be talking about the power of PowerPoint, how to be a visual storyteller to design a business impact with Emily Schneider. Emily is a PowerPoint design expert, a visual storyteller with nearly 2 decades of marketing and branding experience, passionate about transforming complex content into captivating presentations. She thrives on strategic collaborations to create impactful visuals that resonate with the target audience. So, Emily, welcome to the Success Secret podcast.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
I am glad you are with me on this episode, Emily. So, first of all, because this is the Success Secret podcast, and you've been in nearly 2 decades in marketing and in branding, I want to know your own definition of success working with other people and through the years, and what do you see other people, how would they define or have certain misconceptions around success?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I find success is something that we all have to establish as our own. So for me, success means having a client who is happy with the product, feels confident, is excited to share it, especially with PowerPoints, right? It's usually a story that then they're going to pay forward or pass along. And so having a client who has achieved that goal of simplifying their story, having it designed well, and then being able to communicate it and share it out. That's successful. Personally, for me, success means, doing something that I love and making an impact and an income. So I think it varies on what the need or each individual, I should say. But from a business standpoint, it's definitely happy clients, being collaborative, building on something better, and going through the journey of what that looks like. Creative process is a process for a reason, and I think I love when my clients can kind of come in and be part of that creative process. It's not just me delivering something and one-sided.
That's very important. So now, can you give us an overview of how you got into the PowerPoint and love PowerPoint? I don't really like PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint. I hate all the Microsoft Office suite, but in general, the only one that I would say that I would use is Excel actually, but PowerPoint. So how did you get into PowerPoint, designing slides, having being a visual storyteller, and of course this would help businesses. So can you give us an overview of this? How did you get it?
Totally. It started when I was young. I always loved expressing myself, doing things, using my hands and my right and my mind, that connection to build something, to make something. And it just kept evolving as a kid. I think when we're young, we all believe that we're artists or we can make anything we want. And I just always held on to that or saw things in a way that I tried to break it down to bring them to life. And it manifested obviously over the years. When I was in high school, I was taking a bunch of different types of art classes, and they just had introduced a couple computer classes. And that's when I got into the idea of drawing on the computer. And I had never heard of that concept before. It's kind of new at the time, early 2000s. And so, but I quickly just fell in love again with looking at something and bringing it to life from a flat place to something that felt 3D or just, created an expression. And with that love, I started, I was getting ready to go to college and started exploring different avenues and found that this was something I could do. And it was like, there are jobs that you could be a designer or be a creative with the computer. And so I went to college and I studied visual communications at the University of Kansas. And so I've always had a fine art kind of eye, and my degree is a BFA. And so that led me into going into the marketing and agency world as a creative designer, creative director, working through that system. But along the way, what I loved was creating pieces, but I really loved helping to present the pieces to my clients who were the ultimate decision makers. And that kind of started to manifest into presentations were critical in what we did, usually, led by account people with some creative help. And I just always geeked out about that. And I've always been a person who wanted to learn. And so when I found the opportunity, I always asked if I could help build something, if I could make it cleaned up. With a knack for visually seeing things differently and cleaning up or simplifying, I started that's how you design, or that's how I was taught in some of the principles in my college. So I started to evolve into that, and then loved doing like new business pitches and that. And so when I was working, through the agencies, there's always an opportunity to do PowerPoint, and I loved it. And then I had a friend or a coworker at the time who introduced me to a potential freelance client who literally they just needed help with their Google slides. I didn't really realize it was a thing. But it led me into actually leaving the agency world, going to work for them as their brand strategist and marketing lead. And really, they were a bunch of data scientists working on a startup, and they needed help articulating their data, their science, and what they did, and getting investors and selling it and getting clients through their system of startup process. And so I realized the love of not only designing a story in limited I say within the box, because PowerPoint is kind of a little box, right? I think that's right. Like when you say you don't like it, like it's supposed to be a presentation tool. It's not supposed to be a design tool, but I love that I can take those restrictions and really build beautiful things and help tell stories. And it really was my first, I eventually worked with them, but my first freelance clients, Nate and Reed. And when they saw the evolution of what they presented to me and what I gave back, it was that feedback and that response. Like when I saw that I had achieved success in their mind or helped them, it was kind of addicting, I should say. And I just kept going into it. I started my own freelance business 5 years ago. I've been more of a general graphic designer, marketing, small business. And again, these kind of PowerPoint presentations, storytelling opportunities would come in my lap every so often. And I started to identify, like, this is what I loved doing. I thrived. I got excited about them. And so at the end of last year, I started doing some research and realized that I really have an opportunity.
Cool. So now, for example, as I mentioned, PowerPoint is a great tool to use, but now there are many elements. Like we know we could be a basic user of PowerPoint, with just putting an image and a text, which is like not very compelling, not very much of a story there, right? So what are with your experience, what are how or what crafting a compelling story through PowerPoint slides is the framework to do it, because it is, as you mentioned, it is visual. So it's not just we're talking about text, we're talking about using text, images, maybe videos inserted there also. So it's a combination of things. So how important it is to tell these kind of stories visually to people that they would be engaged in it, and also would get the information that we need, whether it's, for example, like you mentioned in the case of the business you worked with.
Yeah, totally. So I think what you're asking, if I to state in a different way, is like, what are kind of like, how do you approach it, and what are the things to consider as you lay out and design a presentation?
Yeah.
And my approach is that I do not build the content. So my clients will come to me with their initial outline of a story, and what we work through is making sure the story flows, right? That it has a beginning, middle, and an end. But that when you look at it and you break it down per slide, there's three main things I talk about: slide intention, text, and visuals. Slide intention is literally, what is the point of this slide in the overall story and the goal of what I want my audience to do? And what is the key takeaway, or at the most two key takeaways that I need to have? So less is more when you think about slide intention. When you apply that individual slide attention, then you go into text. And text is, again, about simplifying copy. You want your voice or the story to be told not with all the words on the slide, but to support what is being told, or that transition through your story. It's using fonts, the same fonts, it's bolding, it's bullets, it's really simplifying the information so that it's digestible. It aligns with, again, the overall goal and that slide intention. And then once you have that content articulated or decided upon, it's then adding visuals. And visuals can be charts, they can be, like you said, videos, they can be images, but they can also be leveraging color and shapes and icons and different visual cues to help tell the story. So if you're talking about marketing sales and you identify a color within your brand and an icon, anytime I'm in a section about marketing and talking about sales, I should be using that kind of consistency. Anytime, I'm showing product growth or revenue, right? You don't want to just like put numbers up. You want to show that comparison, and you got to have the right kind of chart. Is it overall how this product is selling against the rest of our services? Maybe that's a pie chart. If you're talking about the growth over a course of time, that's a bar chart. So it's really laying out and articulating the right visual for the right part of your story, which when you apply the slide intention, text, and visual kind of 3-step series, by the time you get to that visual articulation, it seamlessly aligns into your story or
Yeah,
that slide. Does
definitely.
that answer that? Does that help?
Yeah, but also as we talk about PowerPoint presentations, as you talked about, there are multiple things that we can add, like the images, the videos, and the audios, and the breaks and the cut-ins, and a lot of things that can happen. It's actually a very powerful tool if you are, let's say, intermediate to advanced user of PowerPoint. Because I have seen like great PowerPoint presentations that I would thought they could be like from some kind of Adobe Premiere or whatever it is that presentation style. But what is the most important, let's say, element to have in a PowerPoint slide? Is it the information or the visuals? So can we put away the visuals and give a good presentation only through text, for example? What is the most key element in that?
I think that's like a trick question, because you can have a really stunning, powerful presentation with only copy if it's laid out right, if you design your copy to highlight your information, simple words on a page, the use of, I guess, color would, so I guess it's a combination, because color and font choice and the way you bold things or highlight things could be treated as a visual. But visuals themselves are powerful. And that's where, again, it goes back to slide intention. What is the point of this slide within the totality? And what is the thing I want people to take away? Because sometimes it's just a picture, but sometimes it's just a sentence. And that impact is what you're looking for. And so it's a balance. And that's why that's why I think I geek out about PowerPoint, because it can be so strategically designed to really highlight what you need. And if not, there's so many examples of PowerPoints that just have everything included because people believe that's how you tell a story. Even in our new era of everything being digital and on Zoom and meetings kind of everybody being all over, slides and those visual supports are even more important because of the way we digest information. And so, there's some crazy neuroscience that goes with PowerPoint and storytelling and really articulating your information properly to get your audience engaged. That, like, to your point, 65% of information is retained visually. So there needs to be some kind of visual cue. So I guess going back, I would say visuals lead, but copy is just as important, and copy can be treated as a visual.
So can you give us, like, when we talk about PowerPoint sliding, is it comparative? Can we compare it to video content as a video content, or do you think this is a whole different, let's say, monster by itself, which businesses should know and differentiate when they want like a video and when they want to use PowerPoints basically and their slides and for their presentations for whatever the reason is, for to show some investors or whatever it is, for example?
Totally. I think they are totally different. I think of video more as a marketing tool, right? And marketing is like one to many, if you think about it. So you're telling a message to somebody who's maybe listening, but they're not engaged in a conversation. They may have tuned in. Where I feel like PowerPoints are more within a sales kind of mindset. So it's a one-to-one experience, if you will. And it's about a conversation. It's about connections. And that's where the power of storytelling in a PowerPoint, using PowerPoint slides, really helps, because usually when the work I do, it involves somebody presenting their work or highlighting their work and then it being shared, where a video is a continuous story. And this really allows you to own where you pause and how you articulate that message with voiceover in a more non-edited way, because videos can be edited, they can be put together. PowerPoint, if you're presenting, it's live. You're allowed to ask, like right? Like a lot of times you want that engagement, you want those connections. People all, I think the universal need is we all want connections, and sales comes down to personal connections. And so that's why I do think they are different and they should be used differently. Now they can complement each other for sure. But I think the ability to digest information, click through versus let something run, is a different experience for
Mm.
the person that you're sharing that with.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like it's kind of a way to communicate in a different way and to convey a message of an individual or a message of the business in a compelling matter than rather than, of course you can have a story and a video, but also like we're talking here about visual story, like which is something can be I guess maybe fun to see. So have
Yeah.
you seen these kind of things, like people really enjoy to see or watch PowerPoint slides going through it, and actually a lot of that when we talk about that, there is some kind of explanations behind maybe every slide in general.
Yeah, totally. I do think, but I think it's like a secret little joy. So I think that a well-designed PowerPoint is one where you are actually captivated by the presenter, and the slides are the support. So they don't overtake what is being told, or that presentation. They're actually the key support. I always find that like people can know, or you can tell in an audience when slides are not working because people aren't engaged. And when people are engaged, it's because you have the right layout and design and story being highlighted that supports what's being told. So I think it's like a secret weapon, versus something that kind of can be its own thing. And again, going back to your question before about videos have the support of sound, right? They have a whole nother element. And that's where I think voice and that human connection is so important with presentations. And that's why I love working in PowerPoint, for that simple ability to allow my client to own that conversation and that flow and that cadence. I think of it like, it's funny, I say that I want my clients to be like the conductor of an orchestra, that they help, they create the beats and the momentum and the notes, and then but they are the ones that string it all together and make sure it flows, for their audience. So I
Mm.
use that analogy of music to help with presentations. But
Yeah, it's as we're talking here about, it's a way of like it could be engaging because like you want someone to actually kind of absorb things, not just passively, I think, listening or watching or reading certain things without actually understanding what is behind maybe the number for this business is in the slides. So that gives you some kind of a visual, a story, and also maybe a discussion. So that's also a very important and very engaging between two sides. Like I think it's very important because when you engage with something that you are interested to learn more about that, and the more
yeah,
let's say in the same type of presentation, when you go to the next slides, if there are, for example, next slide, so you would learn deeper and you will be informed if there is some kind of a decision from one side to take based on this kind of visual presentation or of a story for the business or the story of whatever it is the PowerPoint slides are giving away.
exactly. I think it's a little bit of, right, all presentations or are a form of persuasion in some way. You want to tell somebody something, and you want to guide them to make a choice or an informed decision or the next move, right? And you want them to take action. And when you start your presentation, and part of creating that overall story and then getting into the each slide intention is knowing what you want that end result to be, right? So you start at the end and then you go back to the beginning to build and craft that story. One of my favorite ways, or the power of visual storytelling with PowerPoint presentations, is I have a 5-year-old daughter and she doesn't know how to read, but she loves books. And it's the same idea of the power of a visual. You don't have to necessarily have all the words on the page, but a visual and something that is consistent throughout a story, right? The same character showing up and moving along on pages. She can read a whole book without reading a word. And the same as a really great PowerPoint presentation is, you can create that rhythm and that story and bring your audience along to believe exactly what you need them to hear and trust and believe, and so that they can make those
Yeah,
decisions.
what you mentioned here about your example, like without words, looking at the images, let's say, understanding the story. That's very important because who is watching or seeing for example, the slides would actually live the story, I would say. So this is how it would be like you are in the middle of the thing and you are living the situation, I guess. So that's engagement, of a very high type of,
Yeah.
yes.
So I guess I go back to your question of like what's more important, copy or visuals, and I'm gonna go visuals because like I'll just hold on to that. I do think I'm gonna go back to the visual story.
Yeah.
I regret.
So, throughout your experiences and working with PowerPoint for years and businesses through that, uh, did you get or receive some kind of a bad, worse advice from someone told you this is should be done and you did it and you regret it doing?
So I love failure. So I don't regret anything I don't have regrets. I love failure for the fact that I can grow and learn. And when I do something that maybe at first feels like a regret or like, oh, I could have done that better. That's what I just, it's, oh, I could do that better. Or next time I won't do it the same way because it doesn't feel right. So I'm a big believer of, again, collaborations, learning, growing, just like getting better at being not only doing what I love as a PowerPoint presentation, but as a PowerPoint presentation designer, but as a storyteller, as a collaborator, as a partner. Um, and so I just love inputs and working through those with other people. I'm always happy to try something. That's the beauty of working in PowerPoint is if it doesn't work, you can change it out, and you're not, undo is a great command.
Definitely. So, do you think that there's something important that we missed might be talking about here that you can add here?
I think that one of my favorite just notes about the power of presentations and making sure that you have designed them to connect with your audience and tell that story in a simple way is the idea that like there is neuroscience and like your oxytocin levels rise. And I love the ability for, again, for as your oxytocin levels rise, you're creating your audience oxytocin levels rise, and you are creating authentic trust and connection and credibility, and you're building your own confidence, but actually also it's beneficial to your audience, so it's like a win-win for everybody. And again, I'm all about helping people just feel better in what they do and how they do it, and so I love that little fact about science. I think our brains are really cool, and I love that storytelling and visual storytelling helps us better tell our stories and get what's in our head out for the world to see.
Yeah, it would be more easier to understand, I guess. So, do you think, in addition to PowerPoint, would you say there are your best tools, resources, or books that could be complementary to, let's say, PowerPoint in your experience?
Yeah, there's a lot of amazing experts out there. Nancy Duarte is one. She is like the pioneer in PowerPoint design and the power of storytelling. She's written a bunch of books. She has some resources. I think also just understanding how people work and how we connect to each other has been good. Seth Godin has been really inspirational for me in terms of just putting something out in the world and seeing how people respond to it and and working with that. And again, I think that's part of learning the course of PowerPoint design and storytelling as that medium. So those are two of my favorites these days.
Cool, amazing. So, Emily, where can people learn more about you, see what you do with PowerPoint and sliding, I guess, and get to know you more and see it?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on my website. I am emilyschneider.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to have some conversations and connections and see how we can work together to make some magic.
Awesome. Uh, Creative storytelling and using PowerPoint is a great way and a great tool for individuals and businesses to convey their message and communication to the other side in a great, engaging way. So it's highly recommended. Though I don't really personally get to the advanced level of using it, so I
Yeah,
hope
that's all right. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help.
it could be fun actually to use it. It's a very good tool to use, and it's fun to learn more about it. Thank you very much, Emily, for joining me for this episode of the Success Secret podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.